My friend cheated on his girlfriend with the teacher, and now she's trying to become his stepmother. The situation gets even more complicated when my friend finds out that his father has started dating the same teacher. Hi, Reddit. I don't even know where to start, but I need to get this off my chest somewhere. My friend Tom has found himself in a situation that seems hopeless. All of this unfolded quickly, and for the first time, I'm realizing how life can literally turn upside down in just a few weeks. We live in a small town in Pennsylvania where everyone knows everyone. People keep an eye on what you're doing, and rumors spread quickly. The last month has been a nightmare. Tom and Lucy had been dating for more than 2 years. They started going out in the summer of 2021 when we were finishing 10th grade. At first, their relationship seemed perfect. Always together, always smiling. But recently, things have gone downhill. Lucy became irritable, demanding more attention from Tom, trying to control his every move. He started to feel like he was losing himself. Tom wasn't like the others. He was always a bit introverted but had this unusual, magnetic charm. I saw how he was trying to deal with all this pressure. Some days he'd come to school with empty eyes, silent and withdrawn. He just couldn't cope with the feeling that his girlfriend had trapped him in a cage. And I saw it all. I saw how he was suffering. And then Mrs. Williams appeared, our history teacher. She started teaching last year, and all the guys in school talked about her. She was young, only 32, attractive, and very charismatic. At first it was just rumors and jokes. Hey, did you see how Mrs. Williams looked at Tom? Something we all took as typical teenage banter. But when Tom started staying after class to help her with projects, I began to suspect something was off. Honestly, I didn't know what to do. Tom was my best friend, but I could see him drowning. At first, he looked like he'd finally found someone who understood him. He started smiling, and we even stopped talking about Lucy, but I knew it couldn't last. Something inside me was screaming that this would end in disaster, and then the worst happened. Last week, Tom came to me and said that his dad, Mr. Henderson, had started dating Mrs. Williams. At first, I thought it was a joke, but then I saw his face. He was confused and scared. Mrs. Williams was no longer just the teacher he had a secret relationship with. She was now showing up at his house with his dad. I could see him trying to hide his fear, but he was on the verge of breaking down. He was treating it like some sort of inescapable trap. And here I am, sitting, not knowing what to do. I feel helpless. I'm watching my friend's life fall apart in front of me, and I don't know how to help him. Tom is losing himself, and it seems like there's no way back. Comments from Reddit users. Wow, what a twist. I can't imagine how your friend must feel. Mrs. Williams seems to be toying with his emotions. I hope Tom finds the strength to get out of this nightmare. This is literally a nightmare. You're right not to get too involved, but honestly, man, maybe you should have a serious talk with him. This situation could break him down mentally for good. Honestly, Tom's already trapped. He started this romance for fun, but now it's getting too complicated. It's harsh, but he's to blame for getting himself into this mess. As a historian, I just can't believe a teacher, who should be educating and guiding students, has found herself in such a messy situation. I hope justice is on his side. Here's the translation of your text into English. It's been 2 weeks since Tom told me that his father started dating Mrs. Williams. It still feels like some kind of absurd nightmare that you can't wake up from. We were sitting in the backyard of his house on old wooden chairs by the grill when he shared this news. It was around 7 in the evening, and the September sun was slowly setting, casting long shadows across the yard. Are you serious? Those were the only words I could say at the time. I didn't know how to react to something so absurd. Yes, Tom replied dryly, staring at his shoes. She comes over for dinner. She's even invited to my dad's birthday next week on September 28th. I didn't know what to say. On one hand, I understood that Tom was literally trapped. Every time Mrs. Williams comes to their house, he has to pretend like nothing ever happened between them, hiding his true feelings and his fear that his father will find out the truth. But on the other hand, Tom dragged himself into this mess, and now I can see how this situation is starting to break him. I've been noticing how Tom is slowly falling apart in front of my eyes. He's skipping classes, becoming more and more withdrawn. I often see him during breaks just sitting alone behind the school near the old gym where almost no one goes. He's trying to avoid everyone, especially Lucy, and I, for my part, can't figure out how to help him. What can I say? Talk to your dad? Or maybe just pretend nothing happened? Neither of these options seem right. Tom is living in constant stress, feeling like everything could collapse at any moment. and it seems like fear is haunting him all the time. I saw it last Wednesday when we were in geography class. Usually Tom always took notes, but this time he was just staring blankly at one spot in front of him, as if he wasn't even there. This isn't just an intimate affair, it's something bigger, like life is starting to swallow him whole. Honestly, I'm afraid for him. I'm afraid that if this doesn't stop, Tom will break. Every day he distances himself more from his friends, and he's even stopped talking to me. Last week he disappeared for 2 days, and his father called me, asking if I knew where he was. I feel like this is only the beginning of a major catastrophe. I'm not sure he'll survive this chaos. He doesn't have any solid ground left. There's nowhere for him to run. Comments from Reddit users. This is just horrible. It sounds like Tom is going through a living hell right now. What a nightmare. To live in the same house as the woman you had a relationship with and watch her play the role of your future stepmother. I can't even imagine how he's dealing with that. You said his dad invited her to his birthday? That's just insane. Tom really needs to talk to someone or he's going to completely break down. These kinds of things can end tragically if nothing changes. It seems like Tom needs to talk to someone from outside, maybe the school counselor or at least a friend like you. He's in a really tough spot right now. This isn't just an affair, it's a real-life nightmare. If I were him, I would have already talked to my dad. I understand it's hard, but the longer he hides it, the more damage it will do to him. There's no good way out of this, but dragging it on will only make it worse. Here's the translation of your text into English. A few more days have passed, and the situation is only getting worse. It's already September 28th, Tom's father's birthday. The party that Tom mentioned a few weeks ago has become something of a point of no return for him. I saw him today at school and he looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes as if he hadn't slept for several nights. We were standing by the school lockers and he said, "Max, I won't survive tonight. She's going to be there with him." I tried to calm him down, but nothing worked. There were about 15 people at the party, mostly Mr. Henderson's close friends and family. I went with Tom, but his face was tense, as if he was walking to his execution. The party was held at their house, in a large living room with a fireplace, and everything looked like a typical family gathering. But when Mrs. Williams arrived, holding a gift and smiling, I saw Tom stop breathing. She looked too confident, too calm, as if this was nothing unusual for her. She walked up to Tom's father, kissed him on the cheek, and everyone around smiled. But I saw Tom clenching his fists. He tried to keep himself together, but honestly, I don't know how he managed it. He sat next to me, constantly staring at his phone, and I could feel that each minute was another blow for him. What shocked me the most was how Mr. Henderson seemed to notice nothing suspicious. For him, it was completely normal to be dating a woman who teaches his son, and to invite her to family celebrations. I watched Tom literally disappear inside himself, unsure of what to say or do. By the time they brought out the cake and everyone was singing happy birthday, he just left the room without saying a word. I found him in the kitchen, leaning on the table, gripping its edge so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "Max, this is impossible. I can't survive this," he whispered, as if afraid someone might hear him. And I realized that this was truly a disaster for him. This wasn't just a fling he could hide. This was his reality, and it was falling apart right in front of him. When the party ended, Tom disappeared. I didn't see him for the rest of the day, and when I called him, he didn't answer. I don't know where he is right now, but I hope he doesn't do anything reckless. It seems to me that he can't keep this bottled up any longer. Comments from Reddit users. I can't imagine how Tom is coping with all of this. The situation with Mrs. Williams is horrible, but what's even worse is that his father has no idea. If I were in Tom's place, I'd be completely broken.
2 days after the party on September 28th, I still couldn't find Tom. He wasn't answering messages or calls. I started to genuinely worry. He wasn't at school, and even Lucy, who hadn't spoken to him in a long time due to their constant arguments, asked me if I knew anything. Tom seemed to have disappeared. On Monday, September 30th, after school, I decided to stop by his house. The Hendersons' home had always seemed so stable. A large 2-story house, a well-kept lawn, and a peaceful atmosphere on the street. I knocked on the door, and his father, Mr. Henderson, answered. He looked concerned, but not in the way I expected. "Tom's in his room," he said, giving me a gloomy look. I walked to his room, and when I opened the door, I saw him sitting on his bed. He looked exhausted. The room was a mess, things scattered everywhere, and on the desk, an empty bottle of whiskey, which he definitely shouldn't have been drinking. "Max, I can't do this anymore," he said quietly, staring at the ceiling. His voice was hollow, emotionless, and that scared me more than anything. "I live in constant fear, imagine this." I'm hiding an affair with my teacher, and now she comes to our house like everything's normal. She's got me by the throat, and I can't even tell my dad the truth. I tried to calm him down, but he pushed me away. Yesterday, when they were having dinner, I just wanted to disappear. I was sitting at the same table where Mrs. Williams, Anna, as my dad now calls her, was laughing and telling stories about her work. My dad doesn't even suspect that I was with her. I'm literally in hell. I didn't know what to say. My words wouldn't have made a difference because Tom was already on the verge of breaking. When I asked if he had spoken to Lucy, he sighed sharply. No, she called me, but I didn't answer. I don't even know how to start that conversation. I betrayed her with a woman who is now trying to become my stepmother. I have no right to explain anything. Tom sat on the bed, squeezing his hands so hard that his knuckles turned white. Max, I can't take it anymore. I can't live with this constant fear that it will all come out. I'm losing myself. That was the moment I realized that we couldn't delay any longer. I told him that he had to talk to his father or things would only get worse. But Tom was so terrified that he couldn't even imagine how to do it. His fear of his family falling apart and the fact that the truth would destroy everything he knew kept him from taking any decisive action. If I tell him the truth, he'll never forgive me, he whispered. This was serious. Tom desperately needed help, but he couldn't bring himself to ask for it. His life was literally falling apart, and I felt like I was losing my best friend right in front of my eyes. Reddit users' comments, what Tom is going through is just impossible. This whole situation is literally pulling him into a dead end. He has to find a way to open up or this will end badly. This story has gone beyond a simple love triangle. His fear is destroying not only his mental health, but also his relationship with his father. It's important for him to find the strength to tell the truth before it tears him apart. Vibeer into English. A week passed after my conversation with Tom in his room. It was 10:30 a.m. on October 7th when he finally made a decision. I arrived at school, and Tom didn't show up for class. This wasn't surprising anymore, but today something felt different. His absence hung over the entire school, and everyone was whispering about him. I was afraid that he had finally reached his breaking point. At 12 p.m., I got a message from Tom. I'm talking to my dad tonight. It was short and sharp. My heart raced. I knew this could only mean one thing. He could no longer keep this inside. At 4 p.m., I was standing outside his house where Mrs. Williams' silver car was already parked in the driveway, as usual. Tom said he planned to talk to his dad after she left. He didn't want her to witness the fallout. I couldn't wait. So I went to a nearby park where Tom and I usually spent time. I knew that today's conversation with his dad would change everything. The park was quiet, with only a few people walking along the paths. The sky overhead was overcast, and a cold wind blew through the trees. I felt the chill seep into me, but it had nothing to do with the weather. All these days, Tom's fear and despair had weighed heavily on me, and I was afraid that his talk with his dad could have serious consequences.
At 6:30 p.m., I received a message from Tom. I told him. I immediately texted back asking if he was okay, but got no reply. The waiting was unbearable, so I decided to go to his house. When I arrived, the lights were on, but the door was locked. No one answered when I knocked. A few more hours passed, and at 9 p.m., Tom called me. His voice was broken. Max, I did it. It's over. My dad... He was shocked. At first, he just sat there in silence, staring at me. I thought he was about to explode, but he just said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't know what to say." Then he just walked out of the room. I don't know what's going to happen next. Tom went quiet, and I could hear his heavy breathing through the phone. He was shattered and drained. I tried to comfort him, but I felt that this was no longer something I could fix. He had broken through the most important barrier. He had told his dad the truth, but what would happen to their relationship now? Anna's not here anymore, he said after a long pause. My dad asked her to leave, said he needed time to process everything. She left in tears, and I don't know what to do now. I didn't ask any more questions. It was enough for me to hear that Tom had taken this important step, even though it still hurt. Now he had to wait for his dad's response, but at least one burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Reddit users' comments. This is incredibly hard for Tom, but he finally did what he needed to do. His dad now knows the truth, and although it's painful, it's better than continuing to live in a lie. Honestly, I think his dad will need time to process this. But the fact that he sent Anna home shows that he's at least open to having a conversation with his son. I hope they can find a way to rebuild their relationship. 3 days have passed since Tom confessed to his father. Each hour has dragged on endlessly, as if time had come to a halt. It's already the evening of October 10th, and I'm sitting at home, scrolling through my conversations with Tom, trying to figure out what will happen next. We haven't seen each other since the day he finally told his father the truth. It feels like Tom has dropped out of my life. Every time I message him, he either replies with short responses or just stays silent. It's really starting to worry me. It's hard for me to imagine what's going on in their house right now. Mrs. Williams no longer comes around, but the feeling that she and Tom are still in contact hasn't disappeared. I feel like this story isn't over yet, even though Tom took a big step. He confessed, but that hasn't solved all the problems. Today at 6 p.m., I finally decided to call him. After a few rings, he picked up. His voice was quiet and calm, but somehow distant. "Hey, Max," he said. "I've decided to go to my grandma's for a few weeks. I just want to get away from all this." I tried asking him about his father, about how they're getting along now, but Tom didn't give me much to go on. We talked again. He said I need to think about my decisions and how all this has affected our family. I know he's disappointed. I'm disappointed in myself too. I heard him sigh, and I could tell that there was still a war raging inside him. On one hand, he felt like he had taken the right step, but at the same time, he was still drowning in his thoughts and emotions. His life had fallen apart, and although the truth had come out, it hadn't brought the relief he'd hoped for. "You dealt with a huge burden," I said. "That's already a big step, but you can't carry all the blame alone. Everything that happened is the result of decisions, and not all of them were just yours." "I know," Tom replied. "But that doesn't change the fact that I betrayed Lucy, and now that the truth is out, I don't feel any better. All I wanted was to feel important to someone, but now I've destroyed my relationship with my dad, and Lucy will never forgive me. She knows, and now she doesn't even want to see me." We talked for about another half hour. Tom explained that he needed to escape from all of this for a while. He feels empty, but he's decided that some time alone might help him sort through his feelings. He said he's leaving tomorrow at 11 a.m., and maybe that will give him a chance to pull himself back together. I wished him luck, and we said goodbye. I was left alone with my thoughts. I no longer felt the same fear for Tom that I had before, but now there was something else in its place, anxiety for his future. He did what he could, but the road ahead will be long and hard. Reddit users' comments. "It's good that Tom decided to leave for a while. He needs space to figure out his feelings and decide how to move forward. I hope that some time alone will help him find peace." 3 days have passed since Tom confessed to his father, but these were probably the longest 3 days of his life. Each hour dragged on endlessly, as if time had stopped. It's the evening of October 10th, and I'm sitting at home trying to gather my thoughts. I'm scrolling through my conversations with Tom, trying to understand what will happen next. But we haven't seen each other since the day he decided to tell his father the truth. It feels like Tom has just disappeared from my life. I've texted him several times, but his responses have been short and abrupt. Most of the time, he just stays silent. I can't shake the feeling that something is wrong with Tom. He went through hell mustering the courage to confess to his father about his relationship with Mrs. Williams, but it seems like this is just the beginning of his suffering. It's hard to imagine what's going on in their house right now. I know she doesn't come around anymore, but I still have the sense that she and Tom are in touch. I feel like this story is far from over. Today at 6 p.m., I worked up the nerve to call him. After a few rings, he finally picked up. His voice was quiet, calm, but at the same time very distant. "Hey, Max," he said. "I've decided to go to my grandma's for a few weeks. I just need to get away from all of this." I tried to ask him more about how he's doing and how things are between him and his father, but Tom didn't say much. We talked again, he added. "Dad said I need to think carefully about my decisions and how all of this has affected our family. He's disappointed, and I'm disappointed in myself." His sigh revealed the internal battle raging inside him. Tom thought that confessing would ease his mind, but now he's drowning in his thoughts. Instead of relief, he feels an even heavier burden. His life has fallen apart, and while the truth has come out, it hasn't brought him any peace. "You've already taken a big step," I said. "You lifted a huge burden off your shoulders, and that's worth a lot, but you can't take all the blame. Every decision had its consequences, but not all of them were just yours." "I know that," Tom replied. "But it doesn't change the fact that I betrayed Lucy, and now that the truth is out, I don't feel any better. I've ruined my relationship with my dad, and Lucy will never forgive me. She knows, and now she doesn't even want to see me." We talked for about another half hour. Tom explained that he just needed to escape from all of this, even if only for a little while. He feels empty and broken, but he believes that time alone might help him sort out his emotions. He said he's leaving tomorrow at 11 a.m. to go to his grandma's, and maybe it will help him pull himself together. I wished him luck and we said goodbye. Now I'm left alone with my thoughts. The fear I had for Tom when he was keeping everything bottled up is gone, but now something else is taking its place. Worry about his future. He's done everything he could, but the road to healing will be long and difficult. Reddit users' comments. Honestly, some time alone might be the best thing for Tom right now. He's been through an incredibly tough period, and maybe some distance will help him put himself back together. I feel like Tom needs more time to understand that not all the decisions were on him alone. People often take more blame than they should. I hope he finds a way to regain his inner peace. Sometimes escaping isn't defeat, but a chance to rediscover yourself. I hope time with his grandma helps Tom find answers to his questions and reconnect with himself. Tom did the right thing. He couldn't keep hiding the truth any longer. Now he can focus on himself, even if it means his relationship with his dad is on pause. I hope time helps both of them process this situation and rebuild their bond.